Houston Cougars, a furious comeback to knock off Duke and advance to the national championship game.
Here is Zion Chris, big hole, open sesame. Zion Chris, wow, the 72-yard house call.
Stick it in your pipe and smoke it, baby. Yes!
Welcome to the Scott Holland Podcast. Back here at the official end of the Cougar sports season. We now have a 2-ish month break of any Cougar on-field sports. We don't know exactly when it's going to return. It's going to be a soccer game of some variety in August, football and volleyball opener at some point after that. And it's kind of a tough point in the sports calendar because we just finished the NHL and NBA finals. Like, I love baseball, but that season's such a marathon that even as someone who's loved the sport basically as long as he has loved sports, period, we do have the World Cup. The World Cup is giving us the every 4 years.
That is saving us this year.
It has been quite a World Cup so far, which is good. Not our topic of discussion here, but I will note that's giving us a little bit of a break from just, I think, one of the most brutal times of the sports calendar. But the brutality ends now. We got a lot of Cougar sports stuff to talk about, and a special guest, as I always like to introduce him. You might know him from 500 something episodes of the Scott Holland Podcast. Dustin, long time no talk on here, buddy. How we doing?
I'm doing great. Very excited to be talking to you guys. A little freaked out that you just said we're not talking World Cup. I have 10 pages of notes about Cape Verde's draw with Spain and to open up group play. And
that's precisely why we're not talking World Cup, because you have 10 notes on it. 10 pages of notes.
I don't know if you saw the goalie for Cape Verde got like 7 million new Instagram followers like overnight.
Did you see also how their starting center back got on to be the team in the first place? Not to get too
as a LinkedIn message in in English or in Portuguese?
Portuguese, which he as somebody, I'm not super active on my LinkedIn, but I'll get messages that I disregard a fair amount on there. So I was just like, I don't know what this is. And then 9 months later, they reached out like, hey, what do you think about playing for us? we couldn't get a hold of you.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I was very incredulous about the 48 teams in the World Cup, but I'm very quickly coming around, seeing lots of the things like we have with teams excited to be there, and Cape Verde obviously deserving to be there after that performance.
Yeah, it's a little harder to stomach for the NCAA tournament or the football playoffs. It's an every year thing. For an every 4 years event, it does water it down like somewhat, but also I don't know, man, if it gets countries that don't normally get to go to this thing in there, and inevitably the later rounds of this thing are still going to be the best teams. You're not ultimately going to really change who's playing for the real serious parts of the competition when it's all said and done. Bobby, I guess you're here too. how we doing?
Yeah, I'm so happy. No, I'm doing good. It was just kind of, you mentioned how the World Cup expanding and a little credulous about it and what we may have thought and compared it to the NCAA tournament. The difference is countries like Cape Verde get in, not another SEC team that finished 14th, right? That's the difference. Italy didn't make the World Cup this year. Could you imagine they expand the NCAA tournament and Duke doesn't get in? That wouldn't happen. And then Cape Verde does. Oh, sorry, Duke, you didn't make it, even though you're one of the best teams of all time. And we're gonna bring in Idaho. Let's do that. It would never happen that way. That's the difference. Is you have to earn that on the court. There's not a selection committee going oh, hey, yeah, we'd like them to be in. We think they might deserve it. In the World Cup, you got to play your way in.
Speaking of earning things, we would love to earn the support of you, the listeners that tune into us every week or most weeks. If you don't do so already, please, you could support the work that we do talking about the Cougs now in our 11th season here by going to patreon.com/shpodcast. You get access to premium shows like our weekly football react shows, like the basketball deep dive that we did a couple weeks ago now, I believe. Any of that sounds good to you, as always, patreon.com/shpodcast. So we'll start the episode with our final Cougar sporting event of the season. We had Cougar athletes and relays competing last week at the NCAA Outdoor Track and Field Championships. I think the big takeaway first, probably the worst outdoor championship performance we've covered in our time doing this podcast. I don't think that's worth mincing words, but given the fact that this team finished top 3 in the conference championship on the men's side and some of the specific circumstances of the championship too, you're missing one of your 4 regular guys in your 4x1 relay. And there were a number of first-time attendees. I would say the majority of your attendees were first-time at the outdoor championship. I don't think the overall assessment should be too harsh, but if we're being accurate, that you had 0-point scores from either the men's or the one women's athlete that attended here, that probably qualifies as your worst performance in a good while. You did get off to a good start on Wednesday, and I know Bob and I were both watching that one live. Qualifying in the men's 4x1 relay prelims. You had the second fastest time out of your heat, third fastest overall, with a really fantastic anchor leg by Louis Inchliff, getting the Cougars safely in the top 2. It's sort of hard watching live because obviously like you start at different points of the track, so you really only have an idea truly of where you are going into that third, fourth leg. But it was really it was a leg where Louis got the baton, where I would say the Cougars were among the better teams outside of Auburn, who just absolutely smoked everyone in that heat, but went from being in that pack to, I think, comfortably second and getting to the finals. But and Randy sees the best time of 38.34 seconds in there as well to qualify for Friday. Unfortunately, things went a little less well after that point. Inchliff later on Wednesday ran the 13th fastest time, the 100-meter dash prelims, finishing just on the wrong side of qualifying for your finals. The 4x4 100 relay finished with the second slowest time among all the teams who finished in the prelims. Also in the field side, CJ Wokeji placed 21st in the men's shot put finals. Thursday, Cleo Ajapong, also competing like Wokeji in her first NCAA championship, finished 23rd overall. And then Friday in the 4x100 relay finals, the men did not finish due to a mishandling of the baton between the third and fourth legs. Also, your field athlete competing Friday, Andrea Mita, was unable to clear the opening height of 2.11 meters and did not place. And Cougars were far from the only team to have handoff problems. The far and away event favorites, Auburn, team that broke the collegiate record in the prelims, did not finish either because of a handoff issue, but never a nice way to end the season. We'll note, like I did kind of at the start here, that for a number of athletes here, this was their first time competing at an NCAA championship of any kind. Your 4x400 relay and your 2 throwers were all making their first NCAA outdoor appearances, but I think you'd be somewhat disappointed that you didn't get anything out of the 100, the 4x1, and the high jump, given the expectations you had for those 3 events specifically. Going to outdoors, that's kind of where I'm at on that one, guys.
Yeah, it just kind of sucks that you end the season like you did with the worst national championship performance that we've probably seen in a very, very long time. Just a bad meet, it just is unfortunate that you had a bad meet here. The 4x1 dropping the baton, we talked about that's absolutely something that makes the 4x1 fun to watch, but also scary to watch if you are if you're a fan. So when I saw it fall, you're heartbroken. You're kind of going, wait, where'd they go? Why'd they stop running? And then you see them like all hunched over. They got their hands down, and you're just like, oh no, and so it sucks. It's yeah, you hope for better performances, but it happens. Sometimes you have a bad meet. I mean, Hinchcliffe barely finishing outside the qualifiers in a sport that, a tenth of a second is the difference between first and fifth. Sometimes it kind of happens, and it's unfortunate that it happened at this meet.
Yeah, rough event for the Cougars, the baton thing especially. Like you said, Sam, not the only team that happens to. Not the first time it's happened to Houston in a big event in the last several years either. So that is just one of those things you can practice all you want. It's not going to make you invincible from having that issue crop up at the worst possible moment. But I think also, even if you don't have baton problems, even if your 4x1 relay finishes on the podium or something, has a really great, it still doesn't make it an overall successful meet for you, because like you said, only that would have given you 1 score across your men's and women's team, which is just not what the expectation is in this program, I think. So I don't think it's cause for concern. Like you guys said, had a strong performance at Big 12 championships, and y'all have said I'm listening to y'all on the episode talking about how a lot of these athletes, like you said right just now, or like you said it before, they're first timers, they're athletes who are not seniors, who have eligibility left, who make you think that you can come back and have stronger performances in the future. But given what the expectations are around the track and field program at U of H, I think it starts to put the pressure on everyone involved with the program going forward to not let this happen again next year, not let this become a thing where Houston gets used to not scoring any points at championships, because the expectation is and should be higher than that.
Yeah, no doubt.
Absolutely.
And with the NBA draft starting exactly a week from today, figured no time like the present to talk about what will certainly be the draft with the most Cougar men's basketball players selected in our decade plus of doing this little show. For a little history, the most U of H players ever selected in a draft was in 1884. A guy named Akeem Olajuwon went first overall to the Rockets. Michael Young was selected 24th overall by the Boston Celtics. I think I've said this little tidbit before on here. The third U of H athlete taken, notice my phrasing there, was a 10th round pick. Yes, they used to have 10 rounds of this thing. It was Carl Lewis.
I was going to say, was it Carlos?
Who had never played high school or college basketball and went on to have a successful athletic career, not on the hardwood. Absolute certainty that U of H will have the most basketball players ever taken, as I've seen Emmanuel Sharp. On basically every mock draft as a second round pick. Miles Hughes in, I think nearly all, also as a second round pick, in addition to Chris Nack Jr. and Kingston Flemings, who will be going each at some point in the first round. And we're going to talk about all four of those Cougs in the NBA draft, and for each player, a little bit of why, what we think the best thing about them as a prospect is, and maybe one thing that needs work in their respective games. When they get to the next level, kind of discuss it among the three of us here. Probably should start with the player who will be the first taken from this group of Cougar men's basketball alumni, Kingston Flemings, who basically every mock draft out there now has going in the lower end of the top 10 picks. Bobby, we'll say here before we get into Kingston himself, good news for you and you alone here. Isaac Trotter of CBS Sports does have him in his latest mock, going to the Dallas Mavericks.
Come on, baby. Come on, baby.
That's what I was doing my prep, and I was like, I'm probably obligated to at least mention that. And believe it or not, even though I would prefer to him not play for another Texas NBA team, besides the one I root for, I'm not as against it as you'd think I'd be now that they have Masai Ujiri, the guy who was the architect of the Raptors championship team, running the show. And I think in the broadest terms, if he ended up with the Mavs, he'd be going to a situation where he can get a lot of time in the court. And I think no better way to learn how to be an NBA level guard than to actually play for an organization that I think looks like it's not being run by someone who's going to trade Luka Doncic for a bag of magic beans.
You had to do it, didn't you? You
had
to do it.
I had to. If I was going to say something nice about the Mavericks, I had to counterbalance that with something
you had to do it.
To Kingston Flemings, I'll give you guys my one thing that I think translates the best to the next level. One thing I think he needs to work on. And I know my answer here is going to be vague. I thought about this a lot. I was like, is it his shot? Is it his ability to drive to the basket? And really what makes me most bullish on him being a successful player at the next level is, we've had some great guards come through the U of H program. None of them were even close to his ready to contribute from day one. For a coach, Kelvin Sampson, who's notoriously tough on his guards, nobody was ready the way Kingston was. And that tells me, even with those intangibles, even with a multitude of challenges that he's certainly going to face, making that jump from college to the highest level of basketball there is, that he's the kind of guy that he has the intangibles to be ready for, and even seems to kind of relish that kind of challenge. And certainly there are things specific to his game that can be reasons to be optimistic: the athleticism, the shot, the ability to create, fearlessness, almost. Again, that he had it in his game to be trusted by a coach who's just notoriously tough on guards, notoriously tough on young guards. To have Sampson's trust the way he did throughout this past year in the Cougar program, that's why I'm just so unbelievably confident, acknowledging I'm not an NBA evaluator, that this guy is going to, if not be an all NBA future multi-time champion, that he's going to have a long and successful pro basketball career. That's why I think I'm so high on him there.
Yeah, I think for me, going away from the intangibles, and I think that's a really good answer from what we saw. The want to play for Kelvin Sampson, who, like you said, is very tough on guards. I think that's certainly a thing. But for me, I think what they look at is his explosiveness. He's very undersized based on everything we've seen from the combine, that people are worried about that with his short wingspan, whatever you want to say. But it, the reason why he's continuing to, yes, he's fallen a little bit after that, but the reason why they continue to have him inside the lottery, inside the top 10, inside the top 7 or 8 in some mocks, is because even at that undersized, he was able to explode past defenders. He's able to get to the rim even as a undersized guard. So yeah, I think that's what gets him there. I think his shot's pretty good. I think he shot really well this year. Maybe not at the level of what other point guards in the NBA are going to do, but his ability to just kind of cause havoc and go coast to coast. We saw that in the NBA finals. We saw that was important a couple of times. And I think he has the ability to do that, create separation, things like that.
You said explosiveness. I was going to call it quickness or stop and start ability. That is the one thing that the first game I saw Kingston Flemings play in a Houston uniform, just the ability to stop and start and to go from 0 to 60 so fast, to go from 60 to 0 so fast. You just saw no one on the court could keep up with him. And it's a skill that I don't know I've seen another guard come through the Kelvin Sampson U of H system with that skill at that level that Kingston Flemings had. So he's going to make a lot of even NBA guys look silly trying to stay in front of him, I think. I think that's the biggest thing for him. And I mean, he kind of does. Obviously he played point guard, but he kind of played shooting, obviously kind of with a 2-point guard system. I think he's probably too small to do anything but play point guard at the next level. So going from being a high school player to being a college, player to being an NBA player in 3 consecutive years is a heck of a jump up, and he's going to have to prove that he can handle point guard full time. Because, like I said, I have to imagine that's where his future is at the next level. But you guys said it, with the competitiveness that he has, with the skill set that he has, it's hard to imagine anything other than him being pretty wildly successful.
In terms of, we call it maybe the con. I thought about, like, it doesn't snugly fit into the something to work on here, but the one con I've seen brought up, you mentioned it, Bobby, the size, the measurables. Probably the biggest reason why he's a lower end of the top 10 pick instead of even further up inside the top 10, maybe inside the top 5. He is somewhat undersized for a draft lottery level guard. You said it specifically, Dustin, like probably not the ideal size to be anything but a point guard at the next level. Obviously not impossible for a player who doesn't meet the ideal measurables to win a title. We just got done seeing the Knicks win one with Jalen Brunson, who is by every definition an undersized league guard. It does just make the work of getting from highly drafted player to successful NBA lead guard a bit tougher, but I do believe if anyone has the ability to do it, Flemings does.
Yeah, I think, like you said, the big knock on him, like I said earlier, is going to be his size. I think if he was, 6'3" and coming out, I think, 6'3", 6'4", and he had that wingspan that kind of matched, I think you're looking at a top 3 kind of guy. But, that's part of the deal. And at no point this year did I ever see Kingston Flemings and I was like, man, if he was just 2 inches taller, I'm sure he'd be a good player. Like that never happened, even though he was undersized. You saw him not afraid to go to the hole, not afraid to take on bigs, not afraid to play play tough against big men in the paint. I would say maybe another knock with that size is, how does he do defensively with much bigger guards in the NBA? Not saying that he's a bad defender. I think he's a plus defender. I think he's a very good defender. Or else he wouldn't have played for Kelvin Sampson this year, if we're being honest with each other. But I do think when you do get that 6'3" kind of point guard, what does his defense look like? You look at guys who are kind of his size, and that is kind of a problem that happens for them as they go through the league. So while I'm not an NBA talent evaluator, just as a layman on NBA basketball, that kind of seems like that. What does the defense look like against some of these bigger guards in the league?
Yeah, he can't work. He can't work on his size. You can't improve your size, but you do have to. You do have to make sure you find out a way to play defense, regardless. I mean, and he's definitely a good defender. I think in terms of a habit creator, he was a very, very good defender. I think in terms of an on-ball defender, he was a pretty good defender. And Kelvin obviously not going to play someone that doesn't play defense, but did give a couple quotes about him defending like a freshman at a couple times this year. So again, I think if he was a college player again next year, by the time that Kelvin got done with him, he'd probably be a plus defender all around. But you're making that another jump to the NBA level, so got to make sure that you're doing everything you can to be the best defender you can, because you're already going to be giving up some size, like y'all said.
Because every guy you're going against was the best of the best, either at the college game you just came from or overseas at some roughly equivalent level prior to getting the association. The next Cougar will be taken is his fellow 25, 26 freshman, Chris Sinak Jr., who I think nobody would argue comes into the draft as, an unfinished product, and not in the same way that Fleming's. It's kind of a funny parallel between Fleming's, who's just like, yeah, he's got everything but maybe the prototypical measurables, whereas Sinak has the prototypical measurables, and you kind of got to fill everything else in from that, kind of as your starting point there. Obviously, biggest reason for teams to take Sinak is not the basketball player he is now, but the basketball player he could be with 2 or 3 or some amount of seasons of NBA coaching and just the experience that comes with being an NBA player. I mean, guys with the 7'5" standing reach and the ability to score inside, in the mid range, and from the outside of the 3-point shot. Those guys aren't plentiful, even in the first round of this draft. Yes, he will need to develop in all 3 of those areas I just said, but the tools are there. And that's why we're talking about a first round prospect here. Even if it's a lower part of the first round, then Kingston's likely to take it in. You have a player in Sinak who has the raw ability. There's no, I hope he can figure out how to shoot from deep when he joins the NBA team. That's there. It just needs to be refined a bit. For me, I mean, the rub with Sinak, the thing I'm worried about here, or the thing that would make me less bullish on him as a prospect, again, the reason why he's probably going in the teens or early 20s as opposed to likely in the top 10 like Kingston is that he looks the part. He is a big man. He's almost 7 foot. His frame filled in nicely, which was a knock on him coming out of high school, which is not really a knock on him now. The Allen Bishop School of Strength and Conditioning certainly got him looking, I think, more like you would want a serious NBA big man prospect to look like. Didn't do the typical big man stuff, at least offensively, maybe as consistently as you would have wanted. Not saying there weren't highlights, but you could trace some of U of H's drop off on offensive rebounding this year to Sinak being good there, but not elite. I mean, you had highlights, but just the inconsistency. I looked at his game by game when I was prepping for this episode. Against BYU, he absolutely feasted. 16 points on 7 of 12 from the field in 29 minutes. Then in his next 5 games, his best scoring output was 10 points against Arizona in a game where I don't think anyone who watched it would have said that he or anyone else on the U of H team gave you what you needed offensively. So, I mean, he has the tools. That's why you should be bullish on Chris Sinak. That's why I think a team in the teens or early 20s should absolutely take Chris Sinak. But it's not all there yet, and that's the rub, basically.
Yeah, for me, when it comes to Sinak, when I kind of looked at everything, you love the size, you love the athletic ability for somebody that size, you love what he was offensively. But I think in games this year, you kind of saw him disappear offensively at times, and I think that promise that he came in from high school where he was just knocking down threes constantly, you saw that in flashes this year where you were like, oh, I see. I remember distinctly texting you multiple times early on in the season when Sinak would knock down a 3, and I would just text you, Sam, and I would just be like, I get it. I get why the NBA guys love this guy. And I think what he really got good at that helped keep him as a first round talent, because I think if he doesn't do rebounding like he did late in the season, you go, maybe he's a little soft 7-footer who doesn't knock down shots, right? Who doesn't knock down threes quite at the clip that we expected him to. But man, he got dirty at times this year and got some rebounds. There was a play, I want to say it was in the Big 12 tournament, where I think he had like 6 boards on 1 possession, where he just was like tipping it out to himself, getting it down. So like, I love everything about that. You just want to see that he shoots better from three. And at like the combine that they had, he was knocking down shots with nobody in his face. Like at the NBA combine, he was knocking down shots consistently. And so how's he do with an NBA level defender on him? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the thing that you like about Chris Sinak is that he's shown that he can make just about any play on the basketball court. And the thing you don't like about Chris Sinak is he hasn't really shown you what he's going to do consistently yet. So it's that consistency piece, which is again what you assume NBA teams are hoping to see as he develops over the next 2 or 3 years in the NBA. Because he was, at times he looked like he was just unconscious, just knocking down shots, and then at times he would just didn't want to shoot the ball. It seemed like. And you mentioned the offensive rebounding was a little spotty. He was also, top 20 in the nation in defensive rebounding efficiency. And it had some games where, because Houston really outside of Sinak didn't have a great defensive rebounder this year. Jojo Tugler's defensive rebounding rate was lower than his offensive rebounding rate. And just, we didn't really have, Sacco obviously did all right when he was out there, but we didn't really have a backup four behind Sinak. So, I think, and like what you guys said, it shows the fact that he was that good of a, especially defensive rebounder, I think is a really, really big plus in his category to be like, hey, I am tough. And it's not like he went to, some mid-major conference to do this. If you're pulling down a bunch of rebounds in the Big 12, it's because you went and put your big boy shorts on in the morning and we're toughing it out to grab those rebounds. So I think that he really did a lot to show his toughness. But like I said, even the toughness at times it was like, oh yeah, he is going to be fired up. He's going to be the one, really screaming and yelling and getting guys fired up. And at times he just disappeared. So kind of like I said, goes back to my original point of, I don't know what play Chris Sinak can't make. I just also don't know what play Chris Sinak can make consistently. And that's what he's got to show over the next couple of years.
And that's totally, what happens with an 18, 19-year-old basketball player. Like, you talk about him and you're like, man, I just wish he was more consistent. And then you're like, oh yeah, he can't drink for 2 years. Like, it's crazy to think about that. He's that good at the age of 19 and you're just going, you're good at everything. I just need you to be good all the time at everything. And it's like, oh yeah, he's 19.
Yeah, to compare him with like the top big man just from a high-level team coming out, like Yaxel Lendenborg is coming in this draft as a 24-year-old, which that'll be Chris Sinak in his 5th or 6th year in the NBA. Like, of course, Yaxel Lendenborg is more physically developed than Chris Sinak. Like, should be pretty obvious as to why. I mean, the raw pieces are there, but right now they're raw pieces, and whoever takes him has to know they're probably not getting someone who's ready to be their starting 4 or 5 on night 1 of the season. Like I said at the top, you're drafting for the player that he's going to be, not the player that he is now as of the summer of 2026. Nothing also that he was an every game starter for Kelvin Sampson, a coach who's notoriously difficult. Like, as much as I'm sure you have to say the right things in recruiting, even if you're an old school guy like Kelvin Sampson, he wasn't starting every game because he had a really nice looking 247 sports recruiting page with a lot of stars on it. Like, see, no offense to the guy, see Isaiah Harwell for what that could look like when you're a 5-star level recruit. It just doesn't entirely add up your freshman season. We'll also discuss U of H's 2 upperclassmen who will likely be taken night 2 of the draft. That'll be next Wednesday in the second round, Emmanuel Sharp and Milos Uzan. The rough draft consensus, at least from the people who make mock drafts that I've seen, is that Sharp will go before Uzan, so we will discuss them in that order. For me, Sharp's 3-point shooting is the obvious answer as to why like this guy could stick around in the league, but I think that misses what an excellent defensive player he became by the end of his U of H career, and that is the biggest reason, in my opinion, why he's going to have a successful pro basketball career. And this isn't me underselling this shooting, because we wouldn't be seeing his name as a consensus draft pick if that wasn't there. But Sharp's by the numbers shooting in college, it's good, but it's not elite. I mean, he shot over 40% 2 seasons ago, but around that, shot around 37% the other 2 seasons that he was a starter at U of H. For me, it's the combination of that ability to shoot from deep, not to mention I think the really deep range he flashed at times, and that we're talking about a guy who didn't just become a good enough defender by the end of his U of H career. He was the tone setter defensively for U of H by the end of his college career. Whatever NBA team ends up picking Sharp won't have to spend a moment worrying about ability and effort on defense, which I think is what is going to make his NBA career, or at least professional basketball career, a long one.
Yeah, 3-and-D guys will always get some love in the NBA. That they've been around forever, and you take a risk on a 3-and-D guy like Emmanuel Sharp. You put him in late situation in a game, you know he can knock it down, and you know that he's gonna D up for you. You don't need him to drive to the lane and get an easy bucket or something like that. You just put him in the corner and tell him, when it touches your hand, put it up, buddy. Put it up. And then on the other end, if it touches his hand, you get the ball back and then you give it to another guy and go stand in the corner. Thank you very much.
Yeah, kind of like you said, I don't have too much to add. 3-and-D guys, those are the two things that Sharp is best at. He's a hell of a 3-point shooter. He's a hell of an on-ball defender. Going to be a little bit tough, I imagine, for someone who's listed at 6'3" and is most definitively a not point guard in the NBA. So I think that's going to be tough for him. And that's why he's a second day pick. If he was 6'6" with his on-ball defensive skills, with his shooting, he'd be going a lot higher. But, like we said before, it's not unheard of for guys who are a little undersized to still, have long successful NBA careers.
Yeah, the size, also the fact that he never really became an efficient scorer outside of his 3-point shooting in his college career. He was good enough at so many other things that for the purposes of him being a high-level college player, that didn't really matter too much, but he never shot better than 48% from 2-point range in any of his college seasons. He flashed the ability at times to get downhill and attack the basket, along with being a great free throw shooter whenever he did get there, but I'd always hoped that would become a bigger part of his game, and it never really did. But like you said, Bobby, there are worse careers to have than being a 3-and-D guy in the NBA, which I think Sharp could absolutely be. But I have a hard time seeing anything else from his offensive game outside of that 3-point shooting translating to the next level. Size, too, as you mentioned, Dustin. And last but not least, we have Miles Uzan, the Cougar point guard. For the past 2 seasons, sharing it with Kingston Flemings. This past season, Uzan probably didn't have the final season in college he would have liked when he came back after a junior season where he was truly excellent as a starter for that national runner-up team. I still think there's enough there in the college body of work for a team to spend a second-round draft pick on him. And what I'm most bullish on with him is what we saw that junior season, how good Milos could be offensively when there are multiple other players in the court who can kind of be the centers of gravity offensively. I mean, that team 2 seasons ago, you had Wani Roberts doing everything he did offensively in the low block in the mid-range game, not to mention having 2 really high-level 3-point shooters around him in Sharp and LJ Cryer that kind of took the pressure off him. And this past season, you still had 2 high-level scorers around him in Sharp and Flemings, but you didn't have the spacing or anyone who could consistently score in the low block like Roberts did for you 2 seasons ago, and you saw Uzan's game suffer a bit for it. I think you give Miles a situation where he can get a high-level shooter or a high-level scorer involved, and you're not asking him to be your first or second scoring option out there. He's shown he can be a really excellent secondary option in addition to all the point guard skills, in addition to being good enough to defender to start pretty much every game for 2 seasons playing here for Kelvin Sampson.
Yeah, I think you bring him in to be an in-game stopper, to make sure a team doesn't go on a big run. You bring him in if another team is on a run, and you tell him just go D up on their point guard and cause a little bit of havoc. He's pretty good at that, as we've seen. I think Milos is going to the right situation is going to benefit him. Not saying that like that feels like a very obvious thing to say, like, oh, if you go to a good situation, you're going to do good, like, obviously, but like one that fits for him. Like, I believe Kingston's going to be good no matter where you put him, right? I think Milos is really going to benefit from the opportunity to be in a situation, like you said, Sam, where he's going to be able to not be depended on as a top scorer and lead the team in scoring or anything like that.
Yeah, I think there's benefit to being a point guard who plays defense as well as Milos Uzan does, who can knock down open shots like Milos Uzan can, who had a very sparklingly low turnover rate his 2 years with UH especially. Actually just looked his all 4 years of his college career, his turnover rate got lower with each successive season. So you do like to see that, even though broadly speaking, like you said, Sam, I think it's hard not to be a little bit disappointed that Milos Uzan seems to regress from his junior to his senior season. We went from the Milos Uzan experience at U of H was I guess this guy is the the Jamal Shed replacement. So like, this guy sucks. We want, we couldn't do this for Jamal Shed. Oh crap, this guy's awesome. I hope he doesn't leave for the NBA. To like, oh, this guy came back and he was a little bit less good than he was last year. So definitely disappointing for a Cougar fan. Definitely disappointing for Milos, who I remember a year ago being like, oh, if he goes, he's kind of like a early second round, borderline end of the first round guy, and now the mocks seem to have him a little bit lower, so I'm sure that's disappointing for him as well. But yeah, I think there's always benefit in any league at any level to having a point guard who plays good defense, doesn't give the ball away, and can knock down some open shots.
We just saw this season he didn't have enough to be a go-to scoring option the same way that Flemings and Sharp were, but sometimes you had no choice but to try and make that happen, and it just never really happened consistently enough. But you can look at his college career and see that in the seasons where he was asked to be a point guard and not really one of the top 3 scoring options, which I would say describes his freshman season at OU and his junior season at U of H, the output's great. If you want him to do more than that, though, I think it becomes a diminishing returns, and that's why we've seen him now as kind of a back half of the second round pick. But there's enough there that he deserves to be on an NBA roster. I think if it was more consistent, we'd be talking about a first round or an early second round pick here, but that's not reality. But I think there's still a reality where he's playing NBA basketball here in the coming season, and I expect we'll hear his name called at some point in the draft. And like last week, we also had some developing transfer news and at least one key retention that we'll discuss in a segment I'm now choosing to call the Transfer Roundup. So I wanted to start this with a program we haven't talked about yet on this segment. I guess this now 2-episode long segment, the Cougar softball program. We found out that Maddie Hartley, who we've already talked about here as an outgoing transfer, would be playing her college softball at Oklahoma State going forward. Kind of figured she'd end up at a power program like Oklahoma State. And though I wish she wasn't going to a program that we would be conceivably facing in conference play, I'm glad it isn't Tech, for starters. And I can't begrudge her for wanting to play for a program that will certainly be in the postseason and could conceivably be in the Women's College World Series. Hartley is the only outgoing transfer at this point as destination confirmed, but we also got confirmation in the past, say, few weeks that Ariel Redmond, Maddox Mitchell, Nevaeh Brown, Shelby Taylor, and Jordy Wilkins would be entering the portal. A few others, but those are the ones who actually played, I would say, a meaningful amount of softball. Brown was the closest thing you had to a successful pitcher this year, though her 7.49 ERA in Big 12 play was less than ideal. It does look like the pitching staff will be largely new faces at this point. The only pitchers who were on the roster last year who aren't in the portal were London Park and Gigi Solis. Redmond and Mitchell, who I just mentioned, were 2 of your best hitters outside of Hartley and part of a larger core of good young hitters that ideally you'd have hoped to keep around. Wilkins was fantastic 2 seasons ago, but never really became a lineup regular last year. It's not really a surprise that she's leaving. Taylor was a spot starter who had solid season numbers, but somewhat diminishing both in playing time and just production in Big 12 play. Big losses from the hitting side. I think no bones about it. I have a hard time seeing you being able to replace everything you lost there with equivalent hitters, even if this ends up being a very productive transfer and incoming freshman class. We'll say, and this could change, but as of now, McKenna Mitchell, who's your best hitter for average in Big 12 play, is not in the portal. Ditto for Isabel Cintrone and Riley Gardner, to a lesser extent than Mitchell, but both valuable hitters to potentially hold on to. The common thread that I saw is that I believe all of the outbound transfers were recruited by the last staff, and the key retentions, or at least who we believe to be the key retentions at this point, are players who are brought in by the current staff. So not impossible that Chrissy Shoemaker and the staff can get their own recruits who can outperform what this past season's team did offensively. But as I said a bit ago, I think it'll be difficult to do so, at least on the hitting side. I guess the good news is it almost can't get worse pitching wise. So if that's noticeably improved in 2027 and the hitting is somewhat worse, then the overall team results will almost certainly be better. But there's a big if there, and you don't currently have a pitching coach on staff. So a lot of unknowns there, and a lot of your best hitters from a season ago who will not be back for 2027.
Yeah, I mean, you expected on a team that bad with the transfer portal wasn't really used by the softball squad or by the softball team too much last year. You kind of hired late, and you didn't get much portal play there. So this has always felt, anytime we've talked about softball or the upcoming baseball, and it always feels like this is the first portal reset of the staff. So not a lot of freaking out here. It really feels like they kind of did what women's basketball did, where see what we got, see what talent's here, see what we can keep. No, please feel free to go. We're going to bring in our own people kind of deal.
Yeah, it's definitely disappointing to lose the productive players you did have off of a team that struggled mightily in Big 12 play, to probably understate it. But I kind of agree with what y'all saying, though. The test of a coach, because I mean, the only way you get better from a program that's not succeeding is to do something very difficult, which is to have a team that is, not great, but find the players, retain those players going forward so you can build. Right. Very, very difficult to do that when the transfer portal is there and a player, like any of the ones that you mentioned going out, know that, if I've been the successful, I can go find a better program to play for. But like y'all said, I think that the real test is Chrissy Schoonmaker bringing in impact players, which she did. Some of the players she brought in were there. And is she retaining her own recruits? You can't really fault a coach too much for not being able to hold on to anyone from the past regime, whether that's immediately before they come in, whether that's after one season. I get that. If Houston has another bad year this coming year, and even some of the players that she brought in who are being successful are then leaving, that's when I'm going to start pushing the panic button a little more on Chrissy Schoonmaker, even though it's tempting to push it right there. It's tempting when you see, a player like McKenna Mitchell go, you want to push that button. But like I said, I think it's fair to hold off, see what she brings in. And there's also the fact that, if Houston goes from a 1 out of 10 to a 4 out of 10 on the hitting side, while simultaneously falling from a 6 or 7 out of 10 to a 4 out of 10 on the batting side, that's probably a huge team improvement, even if your overall talent level feels like it is kind of maybe balanced out, which again is projecting. It's projecting we're going to find a pitching coach. It's projecting we're going to find a transfer in the portal or a freshman coming in to pitch a little bit better than last season's 1 out of 10 performance. But so again, I think that's where I'm at with all this is not pushing the panic button, but also realizing that, yeah, there's a lot that has to go right for next year to not be another 3-21 or whatever our final Big 12 record was for the softball team.
Unfortunately, you were correct. It was 3-21. You nailed that. I wish you had forgotten a couple wins there, but you did not.
Nope.
Sticking with the bat and ball sports here momentarily, got an intriguing pair of commitments to Cougar baseball this past week. I think the most intriguing one, Aaron Grant, who was the top hitter at Arkansas Pine Bluff this past season as a freshman, committed to the Cougs, I believe, over the weekend. Grant led the Golden Lions in average, home runs, and RBI while being second on the team in walks. When he faced off against the Cougs this season, Grant hit a grand slam in the first inning of the series opener to give the visitors a big early lead. Was a SWAC freshman of the year, second team all-conference, named to the conference's all-tournament team as well. About to get a big jump in competition, obviously, but given how outstanding he was in his first college season, I'm excited to see what he could do against admittedly a bit tougher level of competition. Obviously showed that he is a better player than the conference environs that he was in previously. That a guy who was going to transfer up regardless. I'm glad he's transferring up here. Originally a DFW kid as well. The staff also brought in a rising senior right-hand pitcher from the D2 ranks, Garrett Nail from A&M Kingsville. Led his conference and his team in strikeouts per 9 innings last year. Had 88 punch-outs and 61 in 2/3 innings. Sounds really good, and it is. Overall numbers, a little less great. Had a 5.72 ERA. Did do some back-of-the-napkin math. If you take out one terrible outing where he threw less than an inning, that shaves nearly a full run off his ERA. But definitely a project. Big right-hander who strikes out a lot of guys, but seems to fit the mold of the pitchers that this staff has brought in so far, who have great swing and miss stuff, maybe questions elsewhere, but certainly did well. They did well at that at Lamar with the general profile pitcher I just described. I think the question now is, can you do it here? And obviously D2 to D1, big jump there, but interesting couple of commits for Will Davis and the new Cougar baseball staff.
Yeah, definitely following a formula here is the staff with the with the transfers that they're bringing in. Lots of strikeouts, not many walks, but you might give up some runs. So maybe different environments, things like that, it can change. But you've seen them have success with those kind of guys at Lamar, guys who pound the strike zone, don't give up many walks, and maybe get hit a little bit. You've seen those kind of players transfer to Will Davis at Lamar and just get better. So hoping for the same result here in Houston.
I think it's always a risk, like y'all said, to take someone from one of the lowest rated Division I conferences or from Division II and project them to how they're going to do in one of the strongest baseball conferences in the Big 12, one of, maybe second or third. I don't know exactly where we are in the RPI right now, somewhere behind the SEC, but not too far behind. On the one hand, I go, oh man, this kind of looks like the recruits we were bringing in under the last guy, but on the other hand, not everyone that brings in that level of recruit is having the same level of results, right? So that is
exactly.
That is why you wanted to bring in Will Davis, is because you trust him. You didn't bring him in because you expected him to be pulling, third round MLB draft picks out of high school and getting them to come to U of H, pulling, starters from the SEC and getting them to come to U of H or anything like that. You brought him in because you believe in his developmental ability and you believe in his scouting eye. So if he says that this guy can move up from the SWAC to Division I, or this guy can move up from D2 to Division I, I don't know, maybe he can, maybe he can't, but we hired this guy because we trust him to make those kind of decisions and to develop those guys once they get here. So, good to see him continuing to bring guys that you go, okay, I don't know if that's going to work, but if he's the coach I think he is, I can see him making that work.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you really kind of look at it, this team hasn't been in a regional in 8 years, since 2018, I believe. And with that, you're not going to get those MLB third round talents to come see you. You know what you do? You take the guy from Arkansas Pine Bluff and you make him good. And then the 10th round MLB talent goes, hey, wait a minute. That guy did pretty good with him. And then you take the 10th rounder and you turn him into a third rounder. And, you got to build on it. It would be very unfair of us to come in and be like, man, we expect to be number one or, a top 3 team in the Big 12 next year. Like, that would be an insane thing to expect. And this level of recruit, like you said, it does kind of feel like the same thing the last regime did. But what you now get to add is, we think this guy is better at evaluating talent and developing the talent, like you said, Dustin.
And it periodically worked for the last guy. Just unfortunately, it was like on an individual level. It's like, Rob Gasser is really good, but the pitching staff as a whole sucks. Antoine John's really good, but don't really have a lot of other guys in the staff that we can rely on. And you don't need all of these guys you're taking on as like the guys that could swing and miss stuff who are kind of projects to work. But if a handful of them do pan out and you do see career best seasons, then obviously you're feeling pretty good about it. And I think the results will bear that out. Also with Rachel Pollack now in charge of the women's golf program, we had a few key announcements there. One unfortunate transfer out, but a couple of new arrivals. Bobby, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, man. The one I was hoping we could keep, the one player I was really fingers crossed that we could keep because she is from Katy. Like, we should have kept her. Malin Kim, unfortunately, not just leaving, but going to SMU. Like, that's brutal. Like, I would have felt much better if she just followed Coach Lasprilla to Alabama. I'd been like, okay. But to go to SMU, a program that you play in just about every tournament, that one really sucks, man. That one hurt, Sam, when you sent it to me. I think it was at work, and you were like, I got some bad news, buddy. Then he sent me the screenshot, and she's in the SMU stuff, and you're just like, God, this sucks, man. So, you lose her. So, that one is most unfortunate. And then you did bring over Louisiana Monroe's 2 best players that had eligibility left in Daniela Campillo Martinez, and then you had Zoe McLean-Tatton. Better than what you kind of had on the roster, about at that level. Not as good as Malin Kim, but you had a win this year from Daniela Campillo Martinez. So she did bring her 2 best players that she has with her. And it looks like she was, I was on Instagram and I saw she was Sadie Adams has a tournament in England right now, and she was like, super proud of you, Sadie. Hope you do well. So maybe you're keeping one of the better recruits that Coach Lesbria brought in over the last couple of years.
I would say is good news there. We also had some, speaking of key retentions, Cougar tennis head coach Valeria Zaliva bringing back two players who saw action for you this past season. I would say the player who played the most out of that is Eva Seppa, who's going to be going into her senior season. This past season had a 9-4 singles record, including multiple Big 12 ranked wins as well. And we also got the announcement today that the team's lone freshman for this past season, Alexa Lavinia Pujac, is back. Pujac came in as a highly ranked Romanian junior who was a part-time starter this past season. She went 3-1 singles, mostly played in the non-conference portion of the season, but was a recruit the previous staff was very excited about. So excited to have her back and competing under the new staff. At this point, the only returnee we're waiting official word on is Valeria Croatina, who is 14-1 this past spring in singles. I'm cautiously optimistic because she's still on the U of H online roster, still has U of H tennis in her social media bio, and there's also been no portal announcement, though information on the tennis portal's a little harder to come by, but not non-existent either. It's basically two accounts that I go to each day and cross my fingers that I don't see. There's actually a Valeria from another team, and I briefly saw a heart and mouth, but then saw an athlete who's very obviously not Valeria Croatina. So nothing there. I'm cautiously optimistic she'll be back, but we don't have official word yet. But still, a big positive development that you now have potentially half your starting lineup back, plus a really exciting recruit coming in from Denver as well. I think if you had to build basically a roster from scratch, that would make immediate success a lot harder for your new head coach. So I think it can only be good news that you are not having to do that. And last but not least here on the show tonight, big annual thing that we love to do here, our 9th annual Pawscar Awards. We didn't do one our first season doing this show, and we didn't do one the COVID season 2019-2020 for obvious reasons. Tonight we are not naming the winners, but we are announcing the categories and the athletes and the teams and the coaches who will be making up the awards group for the season. Bobby, kick us off here, pal.
All right, so welcome to the nominees. This feels like the Oscars for me, where I feel like we should have like a whole display with like the red carpet and all this kind of stuff. But we're going to start with Male Athlete of the Year, and we are going to start with our number one candidate is Kingston Flemings. I said number one, our first candidate. He is not guaranteed the winner here, but we will start with Kingston Flemings, obviously from the men's basketball team. Then you have Amari Thomas from football, wide receiver Connor Wigman from football, Cade Climby from baseball, and Andrea Mita from track. And those are going to be your men's candidates.
Your female athlete of the year nominees are Moa Svidinskild from your women's golf team, Michelle McLeod from swimming and diving, Sophie Schouten from tennis, Cleo Ajapong from track, and Maddie Hartley from softball.
And real quick, before I do my category, I'm just going to throw out a reminder. If you are a Scott and Holman podcast patron,
Ooh, yeah,
you get to vote. The final result is I get a vote, Bobby gets a vote, Sam gets a vote, and the patrons do get to collectively get a vote as well. So I'm sure Sam will throw the link to the ballots on the Patreon page there. So be sure to look out for that between now and the next episode. But my next category to announce is Game of the Year for an entire team. And we have 5 categories here. We've got football, beating top 25 Arizona State on the road, a game that happened on October 25th. Ask me how I know. We've got men's basketball beating number 14 Arkansas in New York City, a very exciting game. I guess it was Newark technically, but we'll go with the New York City area. We've got women's golf finishing second place at Big 12 championships. We've got Cougar tennis sweeping BYU 4-0 for their highest ranked win in a decade. And we've got baseball with a crazy comeback from down 7-0 to beat number 2 UT Austin.
All right, next up is Game of the Year for an individual. So this is an individual performance. We don't pay too much attention at the final result, even though it does matter sometimes. First is going to be Kingston Fleming scoring 42 at Tech. Kristinek, 17 points, 14 rebounds in the Big 12 semifinals win over Kansas. Wigman, 312 total yards, 201 pass, 111 rush, with 3 touchdowns in that road win over ASU. Malin Kim finishing third at Big 12 championships. Andrea Mita winning his first Big 12 outdoor title in men's high jump, clearing 7'5". And McKenna Mitchell, 6 RBI and a walk-off walk in comeback win over Kansas.
Our next category is Team of the Year, honoring the best Cougar teams of the athletics year that was. We have football, women's golf, tennis, men's basketball, and swimming and diving.
All right, next category is Coach of the Year. You might be able to guess who these coaches are if you paid attention to the Team of the Year nominees. We've got Willie Fritz leading the football team to 10 wins, Lydia Laspria leading the golf team to championships for the first NCAA championships for the first time, Kelvin Sampson leading a freshman heavy group to a Sweet 16, Kat Adamovich leading tennis to his most successful season in many years, by far his most successful Big 12 season, and Tanika Jameson continuing her high level of performance with the swimming and diving team.
So now we have graduating senior of the year. That is going to be, your first candidate is Emmanuel Sharp. Next up is Melissa Vinnisgold from women's golf, Carlos Allen from football, Sophie Schouten from tennis, and Natalie St. Germain from women's golf as well.
This next category is going to be fairly short. Freshman of the Year, Kingston Flemings. It's kind of self-explanatory.
Who are you guys voting for? I don't know who I'm voting for in that one. So I haven't made up my mind.
I'm writing in a freshman reliever from the baseball team.
We'll say transfer of the year. A few more candidates there. We have Amari Thomas from the football team, Connor Wigman from the football team, and Dean Connors from the football team.
All right, and finally, we've got play of the year, one of my favorite categories every year because I get to pull up all those YouTube videos and watch them a couple of times and relive some of the most fun moments from the Cougar season. So we've got 6 candidates here. First, we've got the men's 4x1 relay winning the Big 12 outdoor title and also setting the University of Arizona facility record at the same time. We've got Dean Connors' absolutely mind-boggling one-handed catch versus Oklahoma State for a touchdown. We've got women's basketball hitting the buzzer beater versus Cincinnati to get Coach Mitchell his first Big 12 win. We've got Kingston Fleming's dagger 3 in the home win over Tech to seal the deal late there. We've got Blake Fields from Cougar Baseball with the outfield double play to end a game, walk-off outfield double play in a win over Texas Tech, which I believe was Houston's first win over Texas Tech since like 96 or something. And then finally, we've got Riley Gardner walk-off home run, capping a 7-run 7th inning for the Cougars to come back and beat Michigan 10-9 early in the season when we thought the team might still be good.
I was gonna make a joke earlier, like have an in memoriam, but it's all the spring sports coaches who left for other jobs here. Yeah, you gotta laugh to keep from crying. So we'll reiterate what Dustin said. Also, if you're a patron of the show, you get to potentially cast the deciding vote of this. If the 3 of us split and you happen to pick one of the ones we do, you could be deciding our 9th annual Pawscars. And if any of that sounds good to you, along with the bonus episodes and just the idea of supporting the work that we do on a weekly basis, please go to patreon.com/shpodcast. I think that's all the Cougar happenings, guys. Bobby, take us home.
I hate doing this in front of Dustin because it's like the Godfather's watching you, and like if I mess it up, I'm gonna get in a lot of trouble. He's gonna be like, "Cut the tape, redo it." but also that makes Dustin sound terrible. Dustin would never yell at me like that because we'd fight. We've gotten into some arguments. It's definitely never been over this. It's definitely been over very useless sports things. Okay, that's really it. But in all seriousness, we want to thank you guys so much for listening. We really, really do appreciate it. If you have any feedback for us, please feel free to send it to us. You can find us on social media. You can find us on Twitter at SH Podcast. You can find us on Blue Sky at podcast.bsky.social. You can email us if you're feeling froggy and you have a long form version of something you want to tell us. You can email us at shpodcast@gmail.com. And if you want to vote in this year's Pawscars, or you just want to support the work that Sam and I do, Dustin occasionally does. He's got to go find all those videos. You can throw a little money at us and vote in the Pawscars. Like I said, $5 a month gets you that vote. It also gets you some really fun off-season content that we've kind of been working on and that we've been talking about doing. So super excited about that. And guys, I think I covered it all. What do we say here?
Go Cougs.
All right. Go Cougs! Let's go!